Hello there, teachers. This is Christy from the Curriculum Department. I wanted to take a little bit of time today to go over our ELA routines that were developed in our digital curriculum for Canvas. These routines were developed and are in place for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. So I wanted to do a little video and give you some background on it. But first of all, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been a very challenging time, and I'm sure there will be more challenges ahead. But I wanted to let you know that you are awesome. You wake up every day to teach kids and do a great job at it. And thinking about our ending last spring and into the beginning of summer there, you did some great things for kids. It brought me to tears to see the things that were going on. Your kids missed you, you missed them, and they know that you love them. I like this little quote that said, "Today they might be in your classroom driving you to insanity, but one day when they're all grown up, they'll remember the teachers that never gave up on them." And I thought about the pandemic and just that circumstance of how we didn't give up on our kids. Though you couldn't see them, you still made every effort to help them and to reach out to them, and they felt that love. So much appreciation to you for a job well done. With that, we were thrown into that situation in just a couple of days. We gave you a couple of things to get you started, but realized that we all were doing just the very best we can in that situation. So with going forward, we wanted to provide you some digital curriculum resources to help support you. It takes time and effort to create things digitally. And so we felt that if we could create some things for you to use, that might lessen your load this coming year. With that in mind, these digital resources were made for you to be able to focus on teaching, building relationships, and selecting content rather than creating the content. So it's a set of student-facing resources that are organized by learning target and essential skills. It's just a base curriculum that you can add to and customize. You pick and choose what you want to use. We've created some things and they're there for you. With that in mind, I wanted to talk about what was created and why it was created. So as ELA teachers, and having been used to a basal program for our curriculum, we're kind of used to a routine, a Monday through Friday routine. You do this on Monday with your vocabulary, then you do this, etc. And so we have been used to that routine, but that routine that is aligned with our basals isn't really aligned to our teaching standards and our essential skills. So as we defined our essential skills and shared those with you and gave resources to you through our fellows, there was still that question of, what do I do on Monday with this? Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And so this year we decided that we would create some routines around those essential skills that would help you and really help students who are online digitally. Sometimes we feel like we need to add a whole bunch of new things and make things new and fun and creative to engage kids. But when our kids are at home learning digitally and nobody's there to support them, if we can get into a regular routine and students know what to expect, it's going to be so much easier for them to focus on the content and learning rather than the routine and what to do from day to day. So that is why these routines were created. With these routines that have been developed, I want you to realize that these routines are taking into account that students have been explicitly taught these skills. They have to know the skills and able to do the routine. So when we created these as ELA fellows and we created these routines, teachers were really stressing out because they knew it had to be explicitly taught, but they didn't know everybody teaches it a little bit different and in a different order, and they may use different resources to do that, to teach it. They may use some science text. They may use something from Common Lit. They may use journeys. So it was hard for us to sit down and write a curriculum that would explicitly teach everything and in an order and with resources that we felt like that was what made you the teacher that you are. We wanted to still give you that freedom. But also in mind, I realized that our intent was to do a PD session on these routines last spring when we shut down. We had them all ready to go. We were for all of summer. I had all of the fun boxes full of stuff for our PD outside my door, and it was really sad to walk by them every day. So we didn't get to teach you these routines and our philosophy behind them. Also, we were going to do a PD at the beginning of this year and show you. But we know the heavy load and all that you're doing to get ready to get kids back safely. So we felt like a PD wasn't a good use of your time during this time. So that is why I am creating this video to give you the background on these routines that will help you to be able to use these resources and have an understanding of them. So our ELA routines, depending on the grade, can include phonics routine, vocabulary, grammar, fluency, reading literature, and reading informational text. For this video today, I am just going to go over the fluency, reading literature, and reading informational routines, so you have an understanding of those. The first one is fluency. I love, love, love this routine. The thing I love most about it, it's built on our science content. So students are practicing reading their science. So after they've read it several times throughout the week, they're going to have a good understanding and background of that science content and the vocabulary that's associated with it. The content came from our state office. So our state office creates what they call OER science textbooks that are aligned to the core. If you click on these links, these are the different textbooks for the grade. And this is where these passages came from that our fellows developed. So as far as the routine goes for fluency, I wanted to talk about the fact that fluency is an essential skill. And once again, we have created these around our essential skills. We want kids to practice and know these essential skills inside and out so they can leave with mastery in our grade. So here are your grade level essential skills that go along with this fluency routine that we're putting in place. Okay. With that, here is what the 5-day routine looks like. This routine was taken from a FORI model, which stands for Fluency Oriented Reading Instruction. So on day 1, you have teacher read. Students will follow along while the teacher reads. The next day is echo read. Students echo what the teacher reads, a short section at a time. So for our online learners, we've already recorded these teacher reads that you can put in for them. For the echo read, what the online learners will do is they will push play, and after a sentence or two, push stop, and then repeat what was read. That is the echo read. For the choral read, they read in unison with the teacher recording. Then the following day will be a partner read. Our online learners will read that to an adult for their partner read. And then on the final day of the week or this routine, students will write a summary or retell or read it independently. There are several things they can do on this last day. For our online learners, it was hard to have them record and do that. So I think most of them are going to be writing a retell or doing a retell or writing a summary. You would be amazed at how writing a summary improves comprehension and writing. So a nice little tie-in there. Next routine here is our reading routines. So Our fellows were able to attend a conference in January. This conference introduced them to a routine that helps students to unpack informational text. It was called Neon Read On from the Get Your Teach On. So with that strategy, we took that strategy and adapted it a little bit for our Weber routine. So, and then we online created one for literature. So with that routine, the first part of the routine is not, which students have to understand and is not actually in the routine, is they have to decide, is this an informational text or a piece of literature? So this is an essential skill for our students, I believe, in starting in first grade. They have to know the difference between the two. So with that, once they decide if it's informational text or literature, they then take this pathway, what we are calling a pathway to understanding, to understand the text. Now, the cool thing about this, guys, is these pathways that we are following cover every standard in our informational and literature standards. So if we're doing this routine and following these pathways, we are covering all of those standards. Pretty cool, exciting stuff. So let's start out with the informational text routine, and what does that actually look like? So once a student has decided it was an informational text, this is what they're going to do with that text. Now, as I go through this routine, keep in mind, this is a routine that once students are taught these skills, they can do with any piece of informational text, okay? So there is going to be some initial teaching of these different things that needs to take place. This is where our fellows had a difficult time. So they loaded up a bunch of resources to help you teach these different skills within the routine. So with that in mind, I wanted to talk about all of the essential skills within your grade band that are covered in this routine. As you can see, there are check marks. The light gray one I put on inferences because our routine does not specifically say do an inference, but inferencing is done throughout this process, okay? With that, I have a little link right here that we're going to be looking at throughout this routine. It's for our vertical progression of informational text throughout the grade levels. So I just want to take a minute and talk about that. This can also be found on our ELA website, okay? So if you go to wsd.net/ELA and you're in our website here, if you click on your grade level, any grade level, K5, and you go to Utah Core Standards, you're going to find these vertical grade level alignments here for each of the different areas of our core, okay? So that is where you can find them anytime. So let's go into our routine, okay? If we go down that side of the informational text routine, these are the steps. Step 1 says identify topic. It's also when we're going to do some vocabulary development and look at keywords and details. This is our first read. We are just looking at what this text is telling us and what vocabulary is involved. So within this, identify topic, okay? If you click on standard 2 here, it's going to take us to our vertical alignment for informational text. And if I go to standard 2, here, the vertical alignment, what I love about this is it's taking each of the lines in our core, each of the standards, and breaking them out by our grade levels. The red writing in here is what is new to that grade level, okay? So in kindergarten, obviously everything's red. They're learning for the first time, but they're doing it with support. So in first grade, there is nothing red. They're just doing the same thing without support. And then you'll see as you go down the different grade levels, the red that is added to these. As you're going through this progression in your routine, this is a good opportunity for us to back up maybe for some unfinished learning. So in first grade, if I'm a second grade teacher, first grade says identify the main topic and retell key details of the text. So as I'm doing step 1, I want to see if my students can identify the topic of the text first. And then we're going to, from there, see if we can identify topics of things that have multiple paragraphs. Okay. Third grade, we move on to main idea, and you'll see where how amazingly this process will help students to determine the main idea of a text. It's pretty cool. I have to say, I had never thought of it this way, and it makes teaching the main idea so clear. So let's go back to our routine. So we're going to identify the topic, and we realize that's something that is taught early on in the grades, but it's something we can review with every grade, right? What is the topic of our text? Okay, we're going to look at vocabulary and help students to understand vocabulary within that context. If we look at that standard, we can see it's standard 4. We go down to standard 4 and read through what that entails for our grade. And this is really getting into that academic language and vocabulary. So that's why I love that we are focusing on content in the science content for Fluency, because it's going to help build that as well. And then keywords and details. And you can look at that and see what you're supposed to be covering in that first read for your grade level. Okay. Our next read, we're going in with a purpose. We're looking for something in particular. And that's why this is called a close read. We're going to be looking for evidence of our text structure. Okay. So what is evidence of a text structure? Here we have our text structure graphic that we are using as a district here. So we know that there are several types of text structures here. With that, can I do this routine without my students even knowing what text structure is? No. So we're going to have to teach each of these text structures before we start the routine. Okay, and our fellows have given you so much so many resources on how to teach each of these. But this is going to be our little key here, where we look at the definition of the text structure, and then maybe some keywords, and then what that, how that information is going to be organized in a graphic organizer. So with this, we are looking at some clues. Okay, so once the students know what these definitions are, it will be helpful, and then keywords. So that's step 2. Let's go back in the text and look for some things that help us to identify the structure. Once we think we have an idea of what the structure might be, we're going to ask a text-dependent question based on that structure. I'm going to walk you through this with a text in just a bit, so we'll see what that looks like. The next step is determine what that text structure is and highlight the text structure. And that goes to standard 5 again with text structure. Okay, standard 1 are text dependent questions and evidence. So you can see how that ties in with that step. Whoa. Okay, step 4. Then we're going to fill in that structure that we looked at right here. We're going to take that information and fill it into our text structure. And then step 6, we're going to look at this text structure, the information that we've gained from the text, and determine the author's point of view, or in upper grades, a claim. And then step 7 is write a summary. Okay, so let's see what this actually looks like within a text. I'm going to use an example here of our third grade reading in our new Amplify program. The reading in here is phenomenal. I would recommend that you teach and do these informational text routines within your science text. Why not? You're integrating ELA and science, and they'll get a better understanding of their science text. So here we are. We're going to do our first read of this text. And remember, we're going to look at the topic, we're going to look at vocabulary and keywords in detail. This is also when you would look at all of those great informational text features, okay? So you would go in and read this text and do all of those things within the text. You can see that these texts are great. They have lots of pictures and text features that will engage students and give them additional knowledge. Okay, so we've done our first read. What do we do next? Okay, now we're going to go back in and look for that text structure. Okay, let's read these first 2 pages. In 1989, a big earthquake hit San Francisco. Part of the Bay Bridge fell down. People fixed the broken part, but it still wasn't safe. In 2002, people started to replace the unsafe part of the bridge. Now there is a new bridge. And page 2, people remember that part of the old Bay Bridge fell. That makes some people afraid that the new bridge could fall. A man named Brian Maroney helps explain why the new bridge is safe. So just a heads up, if you don't know this, all informational texts are created in one of those structures, okay? But often throughout a text, different parts of the text are different structures. So as you're creating this routine and developing this for your students, you're going to want to really get into this text and divide it up into chunks that are by feature, okay, or by structure rather. This is something you'll want to do in a PLC with your team. Get your text and say, what part are we going to have them read, and look at the text structure. So I just broke it into these 2 pages. So we're looking for evidence of that text structure. Okay, some of the evidence I found was still, okay, something is still happening. Now, there's something that's happening now, and why. Now, not all of these words are on my text structure list, okay? But if we've talked about these text structures, it could be many of them, but you've got to have some conversations with your students, and as long as they can give evidence of why they chose that text structure and have these good conversations, and these conversations can happen online with a discussion board as well. What text structure did you choose, and what evidence? So as I have worked with different groups and going over this particular passage, we have at first thought maybe it was sequence, because you see some dates and what happened in order. It could be problem solution. But as we had many conversations, and each of those could have evidence, as long as the students can support the evidence, then that's great. But the best one that we seemed to come up with was cause and effect. Okay? Something happened that had an effect on something else, okay? With that, we get to that next step in step 2. Once you've kind of looked for evidence and had some discussion, you ask a text-dependent question based on that structure. So if I think it's cause and effect, I've got to ask a question and see if I can answer it with my text here. And if I can answer it, then it probably is that text structure. So with that in mind, what caused the bridge to fall? That is a text-dependent question related to cause and effect. Can I answer it? Yes, the earthquake caused it to fall. Another text-dependent question could be, what were the effects of the San Francisco earthquake? Okay, so what were the effects? Well, the earthquake happened, and then the effect of that was part of the bridge fell down, and they had to replace the unsafe part. And then they made a new bridge. And some people are still afraid. And that's because the earthquake, all of those things transpired because that earthquake happened. So with that, the next step 3 is once you've determined and you've asked those text dependent questions and it all aligns and you feel good about that text structure, the next step is to highlight the structure. This is where it becomes fun, okay? Kids can highlight. Now, if they have a digital text in the science, I'm thinking they should be able to highlight. If they can't highlight, they may have to skip that part and just go to putting it in. So I did not have a highlighting tool, so I circled the cause in one color and the effect in another color. Now, if you do this with the other text structures, problem would be one color and all of the solutions would be another color. If you did sequence, you would do the sequence in different colors. What happened first, second, third, and fourth in different highlighting colors. If you're doing compare contrast, everything that is similar in one color, everything about one item in one color and the other item another color. So depending on how many items you're comparing and contrasting, you might need 3 or more colors. So this is fun. This is where it makes it very visual for the student, because now I can focus on my highlighting. Look at all that excess that I do not need to pay attention to any longer. Kids won't get messed up in all the details. They want to tell you all the details, right? But if you create this text-dependent question and highlight according to that text structure, it really pulls out the main idea, which we're going to get to next. Okay, so, or following this, I should say, cause and effect. So after they've highlighted them, now they're going to go ahead and put them in their graphic organizer, cause, effect. I love taking this step and putting it in the graphic organizer, because think about when students create their writing, are they supposed to put it in a graphic organizer first? So when we're asking them to write a cause and effect, could they use this same graphic organizer for their writing? Yes, yes, yes. That's why we want to kind of stick with these similar graphic organizers that they could use possibly year to year, and they can actually draw them themselves. They don't need to have these papers with these organizers on them. Students could easily draw these diagrams. And just for a heads up on compare contrast, we usually use this Venn diagram here, which is great, but sometimes when this middle part becomes very small. And what if I'm comparing 3 things? I put another circle here and then it becomes even smaller. So another organizer that you could use and get students used to is something like this, where if they're comparing 3 things, you have the 3 sections here, and then the top part, or you can actually put it at the bottom, is what they have similar. Okay, on to our next step, step 5, okay? Main idea. So with that, our main idea for this section 1, we decided was cause and effect, okay? And our main idea would be very clear now. The San Francisco earthquake caused the bridge to fall, okay? Because we know that cause and effect and we've gotten rid of everything else, the main idea is what's left, and that's what's highlighted, and it becomes easier for students to identify that main idea. I wanted to give you an idea too on this particular passage, science text. If I ended up chunking it into 3 sections. The second session was a descriptive section, and the main idea is here. The third was a compare and contrast, and the main idea was here. So I would try and keep it to sections for a while until students get used to identifying the main idea of a section, and then you can build all that and do a main idea of the text. So this makes it so easy when you break these down into these smaller chunks. And now I'm going to come up with a main idea of the whole text. It's right here. Okay. This was the biggest aha to me, is so often we out of the gate want students to come up with a main idea, and there is so much information for them to filter through to decide what a main idea is, that really when we break it down into text structure, that is the key to identifying main idea. Okay, the next section or step in the routine is point of view. Okay, point of view in informational text is you're going to want to look at what that is for your particular grade, because it could be different for your grade. So that is point of view, I believe, is section 6. Yes. So in kindergarten, it's going to look different. You may do that first in kindergarten. Actually, that may be a first step, because you're going to name the author and illustrator, and I know we do that first. But as we get to second grade, third grade, and up, we're looking at points of view. So in this particular grade, third grade, it says distinguish their own point of view from that of the author of the text. So we have to know what the author's point of view is. Okay, in looking at the text, there are a couple of hints here. On the final pages, it says Moroni explains using models and materials that helps people who don't know much about engineering to understand his explanations. Moroni explains that forces keep the Bay Bridge strong and safe. As he explains forces, Moroni helps build the next generation of engineers. Okay, and then this last paragraph, Moroni believes that anyone can become an engineer. All it takes is a pencil and paper to start designing solutions. So as we go through this text, you'll if you read the whole text, it's a lot about this particular person and what he does to help solve this problem and help people. So from the point of view, we come up with engineers are important. He's really talking about this engineer and what he does. So if he's taking time, he or she, the author, is taking the time to really highlight this person and what they do, they must feel like engineers are important. So as a third grader, if my standard is that, now I've lost my whole thing. Let me pause for a quick minute while I get my place back. All right, here we are. So as a third grade, in that standard, it says to distinguish theirs from the authors. So you might ask the kids after reading this, what do you feel about engineers? Do you feel they're important, and why? And then use, the next is a summary using the main idea and key details. If we go back to our routine here, and we go back to this, where we've identified that text structure right here, is it now so easy for students to do a summary? Yes, because they have the important details right here. So that's what I love about this as well, is it makes summarizing so much easier. Okay, so that is our informational routine. You can see that there are things that need to be taught explicitly along the way, okay? And then once students know how to do that, then you can repeat this over and over again with your informational text. And it will give them deeper understanding of what they're reading and what the author's trying to convey. Okay, our literature routine, here we go. These are the literature skills that are essential, that are covered within this routine. And the dark gray are the ones that are your grade level essentials that are covered. And then the light gray are important and supporting that are covered. Once again, we have the vertical progression that links to your particular, to that vertical progression for literature. Okay, so let's look at the steps in literature. Okay, first they have to determine it's a piece of literature that we decided, and then you're going to read it. Okay, just read it to get the key ideas and any vocabulary development that needs to take place. As you're doing that step one, look at your key ideas standards. These are things you would be doing in that first read with your students in this little section here for standard one, key ideas and details. Okay. So you would be asking questions, you would be asking who, what, when, where, why, how. You would having them refer to the text for their answers and explaining them, etc. Okay. All right. Then after you've read the text, you have your step two here, and this is going to be identify the genre. Okay. So this is a standard 5 in our progression. Standard 5, see, it asks kindergartners to know if it's a story, a poem, informational, okay? And then first grade, they've got to explain what's difference between stories and informational text. And second grade, you're looking at the structure. What is the structure of a poem? What is the structure of a fairy tale? How are they different, okay? So this is this section here. And then as students get proficient in identifying the genre, at first it may just be informational and literature. But upper grades, okay, is it a mystery? And how are mysteries compared to a fairy tale? Okay, so you see you're talking about all of these particular things here. And then in fourth grade and fifth grade, you can get even a little bit deeper into not only the genre, but stanzas and scenes and the overall structure. Okay, we're talking about the structures of a folklore or something versus of a piece of realistic fiction, and how are they different? How do authors approach those differently? So that is that part of your routine that you're going to be looking at with genre, okay? Step 3 is character development. This is fun. I love step 3. So in step 3, we have a couple of things, okay? In our text, when we get into your particular grade level for literature here. So when we get into character, that one here is standard 3, okay? First, they're just going to identify characters if you're in kindergarten. If you're in first grade, that step means you're going to describe your characters, okay? In second grade, you're going to describe and then how they respond. So you can see in these steps, what you're going to do with character depends on your grade level here, okay? But when we get into describing characters, a lot of times we're asking them to describe their traits, which can be a little bit tricky. Our fellows have given you some resources on character and what that might look like, how you can teach that. But what we want them to do, the assignment that they will do with that character development that will help them to identify their traits a little bit easier, is asking them, what did the character say in the story? What did they do and what did they think? If we focus in on these things, what are the important things they said, the important things they did, the things that they thought, that next will help us to identify their traits. And I'm going to show you an example in a bit. We want them to cite evidence, and then we're going to ask them to identify what the character wants. What's their motive? That's part of our plot within our plot line, is what is the character's motive, or what did they want? And then cite evidence. That is character development. Step 4 is our story elements, and that's going to take us into our plot line. Now, a simple plot line for younger grades and for upper grades as well is the plot line is divided up into portions, and I'll see how they relate here. The first thing is someone who is the main character What did they want? Okay, that's their motive, but that's their problem. So, and that is how they're trying to solve the problem. That's the rising action. Then is what happened or the solution. And then finally is what was learned. What was the message? So as students go through, they can fill this in, and that is an easy way to relate to a plot line. Okay. And that is standard 5 story elements. So look in story elements, step 4, number 5, and find out what your grade level does for that standard or what the previous grade levels have done so you can build from there. Step 5 is the central message, moral, or theme. And that can be tricky. So if you start to understand and do your story elements first of what the character wanted and what happened, that helps you to get to this central message easier. You'll see that. And then once you know the message of the text, you will understand what the point of view of the author is when we're looking at that type of point of view. There are other types of point of view we'll talk about in literature. So this is standard 6. And let's just take a minute to look at that. Standard 6 in kindergarten, once again, they're going to name the author and illustrator. In first grade, they're going to identify who's telling the story. Okay. In second grade, they're going to look at the different points of view of the characters. In third grade, they're going to distinguish their point of view from that of the narrator, the characters, and so forth, comparing, contrasting, and then how the narrator's point of view are influenced the events. Okay. I love this because you can see where the kids have come from and where they're heading. And for those kids who are getting it, you can push them a little bit further when you're doing your questioning and what have you. And then step 7 is the summary. Okay, we're done. We're going to summarize. Okay, pretty easy. So let's see what this looks like in a piece of literature. Okay, this I'm going to use a second grade example of Henry and Mudge. This is a text they have in theirs. Pretty simple text, which you think, okay, maybe we couldn't get a lot out of this, but you actually can. So it just has a few little things about Henry in here and Mudge, and it's just a few pages. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages, but we can get a lot of information out of here. So let's see what this looks like for literature. Oops, I think I've gone ahead a little too far or something. Let me try. Okay, nope. So in our routine, step 1, let me go back here. Step 1, we've read it one time. We're going to look at vocabulary and we're going to identify the genre. Okay, so if we identify the genre in Henry and Mudge, we realize this is realistic fiction. All of this could happen in real life. It could happen to me. It could happen to my family, my neighbor. Okay, we've identified that genre. The next is character development. So what did the character say, do, or think? In this text, we found out that the character said, I want a brother. I want to live on a different street. I want a pet. I want to hug you. Those are the things he said. What did he do? He asked his parents for a brother. He hugged his parents. He searched for a dog and he found Mudge. What did the character think? Within the text, this is pretty cool that this text actually did this. This might be tricky for some kids to know what is he thinking. But in this particular text, I want to show you that it actually has a little thought bubble in the text, in the beginning of the text. And here is him having a thought, and you can see him throwing the ball to himself, catching the ball, and just playing baseball all by himself, okay? All right. So what did he think? By looking at that, I think he wanted somebody to play with because he was by himself doing all of those positions, okay? Then part of that step of character development is you will usually give your kids a list of character traits, and depending on the grade level, what that might look like. But then they can look at this and look at their list of character traits. On the list I looked at, there was lonely, okay? I think he's lonely because he wants somebody to play with. And then I think he's loving, and here's my evidence. I think he's lonely because he asked for a brother, he asked for a pet, and I saw pictures of him playing by himself. And the text said he had no brothers or sisters. I think he's loving because he hugged his parents. Okay? What are the character's wants or motives? Well, after I figured this out and I figured this out, I know that he wants somebody to play with. That's what he wants. And here is my evidence, because he asked for a brother, asked for a pet, picture of him playing for himself. He had no brothers and sisters, and he hugged his parents when they said he could have a dog. He was excited about that. Okay, see how all of these go on top of one another and help students to be able to identify these easily. So for my summary routine for my someone wanted but so then finally here, my someone is Henry. He wanted someone to play with, but he had no brothers or sisters or neighbors or pets. So he asked his parents for a brother or to move or to get a pet. Then his parents bought him a dog. And finally, he has a friend. Okay. The upper grades, you could start here with the character's motive, the problem, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and the solution. Okay. You could just take these and pretty much move them over to the plot line. Okay, message or theme. So if I'm thinking about a message or theme that this author might have, it says the author's message is the big idea or what the author is trying to tell the reader. So if he wants a friend in there and he doesn't have anybody to play with, I think the author might think that friends are important, that people need friends. Okay, that's what the big idea of this is. Okay, if he wants a friend, does he need one? Yeah, everybody needs a friend. Okay. After this, I can go to point of view. Now, in second grade, there's a couple of things. You could identify, is it who's telling this story? That's a point of view. This is being told in third person by someone from outside. Okay. And then what is the point of view of Henry? Well, we know Henry's point of view. He wants a friend. What are the point of view of his parents? You could ask your students. How are his parents feeling? Maybe they didn't realize he needed a friend and then they felt bad and they got him a puppy. And what is the point of view of Mudge? At the end of the story, it says that Mudge licked him and sat on him. And I think that is an endearing thing to lick him. So we could say the point of view is Mudge is happy that to be Henry's friend. So that's a point of view you could do of the different characters. Okay, I think we've done this. We've put it into the plot line. Yeah, so now that's it. We've went through that whole process of literature. Let's go back to our steps. Okay, we've read it. We've got the key ideas and identified the genre. We've looked at characters. We've put it in that story elements. Then we've found the message or theme and looked at point of view. Now, actually, that's where I was going with this last slide, is how easy is it for students to then write a summary? They have the someone wanted, but so then finally. And they take that and they just write that into sentences and they have their summary. So I know this took some of your time and I hope it was beneficial. I didn't know how else to get this information out to you, but I felt like if you could see the routine and see how it's organized and what why we did it this way and how it's going to really benefit students and help them to understand what they're reading. And best of all, it covers all the standards in that routine. Think about it. You're hitting every literature standard if you do this routine, and you're hitting every informational text standard to do this routine. The key is you're going to have to do some scaffolding. You're going to have to do some teaching to teach them each of these steps. This is going to be fun and easy to do in person. For digital, you've got these things, but you're going to have to kind of put in how you want to teach each of these and get them taught prior to having them do the whole routine on their own. You guys are awesome. I know you're going to take this and you're going to kill it. You're going to teach all of these essential skills. Your students are going to master it and they're going to have deep understanding of what they're reading and feel confident. I appreciate you and I love working with you and for you. If there's anything I can do to support you, please reach out and have a wonderful beginning of your school year.